Good evening, families and students. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Barbara Gould, and I'm the Director of Counseling, Health, and Wellness. And we're really excited to have you here with us this evening, and really excited for this opportunity to be able to hear from some experts that will share with us a little bit about the admissions process for international students and give you some really great tips for the financial aid process as well. Both Olivia and Sarah, have lots of experience with us, and we are really fortunate to have them here with us this evening. I wanted to say a special thank you to our counseling team, especially Ms. Kavita James, who has coordinated and organized tonight's event. And I hope that you enjoy it as much as I think you will. All right, take it away, Ms. James.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Gold. Hey, everyone. I'm just so glad that all of you were able to join us for this session tonight. As Ms. Gold said, my name is Kavita James, and I'm one of the counselors at High School North. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to share with you why we in guidance thought that, organizing a session like this is a good idea. Excuse me. So over the years, in both high schools, High School South and North, we've had students coming in and international students, and they would always ask us questions like, okay, what about college admissions for international students? Is it something different? What about financial aid for international students? Is that something different? And so, as I was thinking about this presentation this evening, I just jotted down a few questions which are the most popular questions that come our way. So I'm going to just read out just a few of them, so you understand what the general thinking is. Some of them were, are there any extra steps that I need to take in the college application process as an international student, or when filling out the SRAR? Great question. Are there opportunities to receive financial aid? Are there grants and scholarships available? Can international students work on campus, off campus? What does the conversion of an H visa to an F1 visa look like? I'm sure some of those terms are pretty familiar and maybe questions that are ringing in your mind as well. So to answer these questions and a lot more, so we brought in the experts, and that brings us to the two speakers we have tonight. Sarah Blackburn is the Assistant Director of International Recruitment and Outreach at Rutgers University. Sarah travels the world recruiting students internationally, and she has been working at Rutgers for about 6 years now, she says, and she loves reading and hanging out with her pets, 2 cats and a dog. That is just so lovely. And Sarah has just been a great resource for us and has been a tremendous help as we were setting up this session. So happy to have her speaking tonight. We also have with us Olivia Joe, who is the admissions coordinator, recruitment and outreach for undergrad admissions at Rutgers University. And actually, Olivia is the new admissions representative for both WWP High School North and South. Another fun fact about Olivia is that in her spare time, she likes drawing portraits and has just started learning digital art. Way to go, Olivia. A big thank you to both our speakers. And now I will hand it over to Sarah and Olivia.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to see you all here. I'm just going to get started with an overview of what Rutgers is all about, our academics, student life, just a general overview of the admissions process as well, before Sarah then brings in her international expertise to talk about some extra facts regarding international admissions. So just give me a moment while I start screen sharing. All right, can you all see that? Great. So this is today's agenda. We're going to just talk about who we are, as Kavita has already introduced us. We can skip that. I'm going to give some Rutgers-specific information, and then Sarah is going to talk about international status, international applications, supporting documents, and other information. And then we'll have some time for Q&A where you can all ask extra questions that we didn't address during our presentation. So to give an overview of Rutgers, as you probably all know, Rutgers is the State University of New Jersey. So there's a lot of history behind that. One thing we like to bring up is that Rutgers is one of only 9 institutions founded before the American Revolution. So we've been a trendsetter for a lot of other colleges and universities in the nation. More recently, we are now part of the Big Ten Conference, which means that we have a lot of research opportunities, resources, and it does give students a lot of opportunities to explore their passions and really dig into their interests. We're also part of the Association of American Universities, and as part and parcel of our status as a research institution, we are also in some of the top rankings, including the top 25 public schools in the nation, as well as the top 1% of universities worldwide, which might be of specific interest to you. We also are the most diverse school in the Big Ten Conference, something we're very proud of. And we have over 750 student clubs and organizations, as well as over 100 cultural organizations and 5 cultural centers. So Rutgers, in sum, is a place where you can find your own pathway, regardless of where you're from or what you're looking for. To give a quick introduction of student life, Rutgers, New Brunswick specifically, is divided up into 5 neighborhoods. They're all linked by the bus system, and each neighborhood has its own vibe, kind of like Disneyland. For example, we have our Cook campus, which is home to an animal farm. We have our urban College Avenue campus with a train station directly to New York City and then about 1.5 hours away from Philadelphia. We also have our more suburban campuses such as Livingston, which houses our business school, and the Bush campus, which houses our School of Engineering. Altogether, these 5 campuses are home to over 37,000 undergraduate students. But again, because we have 5 neighborhoods, it really does break up the large student population and allows you to also have a smaller, more individualized experience. We have over 75 fraternities and sororities, but again, participation is completely optional. We want you to find your own path. There's a lot of opportunities to get involved in the community, including Dance Marathon, Big Buddy, and Rutgers Against Hunger. We also fundraise for community causes. And because we're part of the Big Ten Conference, we're a Division I sports school, so we offer 24 NCAA Division I sports. And as the most diverse school, we have students from over 110 countries. This focus on diversity, research, and individual pathways also means that there's a lot of different avenues for you to explore academically. We have 7 schools which admit directly out of high school, and these cover all fields possible. We have the Ernest Mario School of Pharmacy, School of Arts and Science, School of Engineering, Rutgers Business School. We also have the School of the Arts, which is very popular, especially because of our proximity to New York City. And for everyone who's interested in biological sciences or animal sciences, the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences is a great choice as well. Then there's also the School of Nursing. We have our upper division schools, which students can apply to in their sophomore year after starting at Rutgers. And to give you a quick sample of some of the majors that we offer, We have biological sciences, which is offered through School of Arts and Sciences and SEBS. We also have a 6-year PharmD program offered through the School of Pharmacy. Rutgers Business School has many majors, including finance, marketing, management, etc. And our School of Engineering has mechanical engineering, aerospace engineering, and the like. But you are free to explore many different paths, and students can also, in most cases, double major across schools at Rutgers. Going more into detail about our individualized experience, our total number of majors for undergraduate students is about 120. We're very proud of the fact that we have a 16-to-1 student to faculty ratio. So again, even though we have over 37,000 students in total, you'll be in classes that get much smaller, especially after your first year, and you'll have a lot of one-on-one interactions with your professors. We have over 175 research centers on campus, and it's not uncommon for students to actually do research in their first year. Faculty is often a great touch point for that. In addition, we have over 180 study and service learning abroad programs in over 50 countries. Especially now, that's a great opportunity with countries opening up again. And we have school-based honors programs and the Honors College. There's a lot of ways that we also work hard to allow you to succeed after graduation. We have over 650 employers visit campus every year. I believe there are 2 mega career fairs held every year. I believe one in the fall and one in the spring. We have career exploration seminars, internships, co-ops. We also offer extensive support for networking and interview preparation, as well as counseling. And we have our Handshake platform to connect you with potential employers, as well as internships. Now, to quickly go over the application process, we put a lot of this in the hands of students. It eliminates paperwork, and you can find all of the information on our website as well. But to give you the quick overview of the steps, it's very simple. Our application can be found on our website, and then students who want to apply, instead of submitting your high school transcript through the mail, you would just fill out your courses taken through an online portal called the Self-Reported Academic Record. Official SAT and ACT scores are optional. So if you don't submit them, you will receive full admissions consideration. That being said, we do have an admissions profile listing the averages of the scores of students who did submit their scores, and this can be a helpful guide when deciding whether to send your tests or not. We also ask that you pay the $70 application fee. And one question that we often get is whether a separate application is needed for merit scholarships as well as honors. The answer is no. No application is needed. You literally just need to send everything in and apply by December 1st, which is our regular decision due date. As long as you do that, you'll automatically be considered. That being said, if you want to hear back earlier, we also have our non-binding first year early action deadline, which is November 1st. So a quick summary of that is if you apply by November 1st, you'll hear back the end of January. If you apply by December 1st for regular decision, you'll just hear back about a month later, so end of February. Otherwise, there's no major difference between the two application due dates. And to cap it off, I'm going to add a link to the chat with a link to our admissions profile in case you're interested in seeing the score averages. But all of this, again, is found in detail on our website as well. And if you have any questions about Rutgers in general or the admissions process, then please feel free to ask once Sarah has finished her presentation as well. Thank you very much, and it was great meeting you.
Thank you so much, Olivia. I just want to say before I begin, thank you so much for the warm welcome. It's our pleasure to be back sharing this information with you. The U.S. college application process is complicated and can sometimes be frustrating, particularly because no school is the same. And so I'll touch on this a lot throughout the presentation. Much of the information that I have and that I'll be sharing today is specific to Rutgers. So you're always going to want to find my counterpart at whatever universities you're looking to apply to, just so that you can make sure that what's the same for Rutgers may be the same or different from that university. So let's start by talking a little bit about the various statuses that students can hold and what that might mean for you as part of your application process. So I'm going to go over 4 different categories here: Daca, or Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals; non-immigrant visa statuses, those who have held a B-tourist visa or are now undocumented, as well as our legal permanent residents. So DACA, or Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, Dreamers, it's a program known by many names, is a program for students that may have come to the US with their parents and are undocumented. This was phased out in 2017, so I don't know how many of the folks that are with us today this particular status applies to, but if you are considered a DREAMA or a DACA student, it does enable you to be considered for need-based financial aid in the state of New Jersey. So if that is the case for you, certainly something you want to be indicating on your application. It's also important to know that other states may treat you differently and allow you to apply for need-based financial aid there as well. And we'll touch on that again a little bit later in the presentation. For our undocumented students, so students that may have entered the US on any type of visa listed here, an F, a J, H, G, B, but no longer are maintaining that legal status of whatever visa you entered the US on, you would be considered undocumented. You can't apply for need-based financial aid in the state of New Jersey if you are undocumented, but you can be considered for some need-based scholarships. You also may be able to be considered for in-state tuition. And again, we'll touch on that in a little bit once we get to the financial piece. Our non-immigrant visa holders, again, F, J, H, G, T, N, B, to name just a few, these are folks that are maintaining that legal status in the US using whatever that visa may be. These students are not able to apply for need-based aid in the state of New Jersey, so no internal aid grants. They can appeal, though, in certain circumstances for in-state tuition. So for New Jersey, and so Rutgers and other states within the state of, or state universities within the state of New Jersey, if you hold an A, G, H, or E visa, you're likely to be able to appeal for in-state tuition. Appeal means that you're likely to have to submit some documentation in order to prove that you've been here for a certain length of time. For Rutgers, we're looking for students to document that they've graduated from a New Jersey high school in order to be considered. Each school will have a slightly different process for this appeal. So again, really important to get in touch with people like us, Olivia or I, at your respective institutions that you're planning to apply to, so that you can be clear on the requirements for the same. Students who are holding a non-immigrant visa are considered for international student scholarships at Rutgers. Then we have our legal permanent residents. So these are folks that have a green card or may have an application pending for a green card. If that is your status, that means that you can be considered for need-based financial aid, both through the federal government and the state of New Jersey. Students who are considered to be legal permanent residents at Rutgers would also be considered for those domestic student scholarships. So there's a difference there. When it comes to finding the right fit university for you, I think it's pretty much the same for international students as it is for any of our domestic students. And the phrase that I always like to use for this is, would you wear your grandmother's clothes? What do I mean by that? You want to find something that works for you, right? Not the university that your parents may have gone to necessarily, unless it's a great university for you, not the school that your friends are applying to, because that might not be the best university for you. Your friends may be wanting to go to TCNJ, but what if they don't have the major that you're looking to study? So I think trying to find programs that are a university that includes programs that you're interested in studying. Another thing that can help you weed out from the 4,000 different options that you have within the US alone. It's a great big world out there, many universities with many amazing opportunities. Location could be important to you. Are you looking to be in an urban setting? Do you know that you want to be in a city? Are you looking to be in a suburban or rural environment where it might be a little quieter, maybe a little easier to focus on your studies? Are you looking to be within a particular area within the US or within the world? Do you want to be on the East Coast? Are you looking to try out living on the West Coast for a while? What type of location makes the most sense for you and what field you'd like to go into? Another thing that might help you to determine the best fit is the size of the university and the kind of university. Are you really interested in research? then you should be looking at those other schools in the Association of American Universities, right? Because that means that you'll have access to those research opportunities. Are you the kind of person that benefits more from being able to have one-on-one conversations with the teacher? Is that how you learn best? Then maybe you don't want to be at a school as large as Rutgers. You may choose to go to a much smaller liberal arts style university. And that's okay. There's something for everybody with 4,000 universities in the US. You might be looking for other specific things that you can do outside of the classroom. And I'll give you a very unique example that Rutgers has. We have a Seeing Eye Puppy Club. Of course, that interests me with many pets at home. This allows students to train seeing eye dogs in their dorm. You get to live with a puppy. If that's something that sounds interesting to you, you want to be looking for a university that has that opportunity. Maybe there's a specific sport that, isn't basketball or soccer that's offered at every university that you want to make sure you have access to play. And finally, thinking about what is the best fit for you and your family financially. As an international student, costs are going to vary greatly from university to university, whether it's in a state that allows for you to appeal for in-state tuition, whether it's not, whether depending on your status. So trying to identify what makes the most sense for you and your family financially. In order to figure out that question, you usually need to know who to go to at the university, right? And again, as the US system is complicated when it comes to applications, it's also complicated when it comes to who would be your support, both through the application process as well as who would be your best source of support once you get onto campus. So, and in terms of the admissions process, it really does vary from school to school where you'll find your best admissions advice. So at Rutgers, our international admissions team is situated within the undergraduate admissions office. So you would work with me, you could work with Olivia or any of our other wonderful colleagues within the undergraduate admissions office. At some other universities, the international admissions folks have a separate office, usually within the International Student Support Office. So they may not be affiliated with undergraduate admissions at all. They may be a separate branch of the International Student Services Department. There could also be a specific diversity or minority office. So again, please don't hesitate. Believe it or not, they actually pay us to answer your questions. That's what we do in admissions. We're here to help. It also may be based on your immigration status. So depending on what visa you hold or do not hold, that may indicate which of these offices you would be working with. One thing that I'll say, I know that immigration visas or not having a visa can be a really scary topic. Universities just need to know the answer to the question. They're not going to do anything with the information other than try to put you with the right folks. So don't be afraid to be transparent and to talk with us about your situation. We need to know in order to help you better. Let's talk a little bit about your international admissions requirements and how they might vary, as well as some other required supporting documents that we'll need in order to assist you through your process. So most of the time, international students are asked to do exactly the same thing as their domestic counterparts when it comes to the application process. Really, we just want to see your application, your essay, your transcript, or your self-reported academic record in the case of Rutgers, and any other extracurricular activities that you may be sharing. Rutgers doesn't accept letters of recommendation, but other schools may be looking for those. And again, same thing. They'll probably want one from a counselor, one from a teacher, maybe a third if you really feel like there's somebody else who can support your application as well. The only thing that may be required in addition to any of the regular application requirements that we would ask for all students is an English language proficiency exam. This, I think, applies mostly to students who have not spent all 4 years of high school within the US. Most of the time, if you have been here for at least 4 years or can prove that your main language of instruction was English when you were studying outside of the US, then that's likely to be waived for you and still not a requirement. So again, just ask, reach out to us. We're happy to help and let you know what those requirements may be at Rutgers or at other institutions. One thing that I've noticed in my work with international students and also with other universities is that sometimes the ACT or SAT scores might be a little bit lower for international students than they are for their domestic counterparts. That's just trying to be sensitive to the fact that sometimes international students are taking this terribly difficult exam. It's hard for students whose native language is English in a second language. So occasionally, particularly for the evidence-based reading and writing section, we may not be looking for you to have the exact same scores that we might be looking for your domestic counterparts to have. I would say for some of those more competitive programs like engineering, anybody looking to go into a pre-medical field, nursing, things like that, the requirements are likely to be the same for domestic students. But generally, we have the ability to be flexible if you're looking to go in some other less competitive programs. In addition to all of your academic information, there may be some other supporting documentation that universities are looking for if you are looking to take an F1 visa. We'll talk a little bit more about the F1 visa application process in just a moment, but I want to discuss these documents and at what point in the process universities are looking for that information. So typically, if students want to apply for that F1, they'll need to get an I-20 from whatever university it is that you're looking to attend. They'll be looking for you to have some sort of written letter of support, whether it's you are signing off on the fact that you're planning to pay for your own education, or perhaps an additional signature from a family member, parent, aunt, uncle, a combination of those folks that are also planning to contribute financially to your education. We'll be looking for some more documentation as far as those finances are concerned. So we'll be looking for bank statements showing 1 academic year of fees. So the cost of your full course of study, so that will include both your tuition at that university, the housing costs at that university, as well as perhaps some other incidentals that we expect that you might incur, like paying for your books, for example. So for Rutgers, tuition at the university with your housing and everything included is about $48,000 per year for an international student, but we're looking for you to show proof of funding for $52,000. So just factoring in a little bit of extra money so that we know that you'll be able to finance getting back and forth from home, being able to pay for pizza on the weekends with your friends, and of course, being able to cover the cost of your books. Occasionally, schools will ask for proof of income. So they'll want to see a pay stub or a letter from your employer or the employer of whomever is planning to finance your education to show that you're likely to have the same amount of money next year as well. And if you already hold an F1 visa and you're looking to transfer from one school to another, they'll be looking for you to complete some sort of a transfer in form so that we will know that your record is active at that school and when we can expect to receive it at our respective universities if you're going to be transferring your CVIS record from one school to another. Once the school has received all these documents, looked them through, made sure that they are saying everything that we need them to say, then we will issue you an I-20. These days, since the pandemic, we're issuing all of those electronically at Rutgers, and I know many other schools are doing the same. So you can expect this whole process to happen over email, and you'll be able to download your I-20 from our international student portal. One other thing I'll note, it's okay to have more than one I-20. While Rutgers does not ask for any of this documentation and won't even look at it until you've confirmed that you're planning to enroll at Rutgers, not all schools operate that way. Some schools will ask for this documentation up front. They'll want you to send it along with the rest of your application process, and they may issue you an I-20 along with your academic support letters or when you're getting your admission letter from that university. And that's okay. You can have more than one I-20, but you should only take one with you when you're applying for your F1 visa or your change of status. So let's talk about change of status a little bit, because I know that this is a hot topic, particularly for students that might be on another visa type. And so I'll focus on H here, but L visa holders are similar, A, G, most of them are the same. You can study on that visa. So if you're on a dependent visa from a parent or something like that, you can choose to come to Rutgers and study on that visa as long as you are under the age of 21. Part-time, full-time, whatever you want. You can also take online courses, or you can choose to be on campus. You have very few restrictions on your course of study if you choose to stay on whatever dependent visa that you were on previously. What you cannot do is work on campus, no on-campus jobs. You also would not be eligible for CPT or OPT. CPT stands for Curricular Practical Training. Students who are doing co-ops, things like that, if you're going to be working simultaneously with your education, you would be using your CPT. That OPT, Optional Practical Training, Those students are working after graduation. So a year for most subjects, up to 3 if you're doing one of the STEM fields. If you choose to remain on your H visa or L visa or G or A or whatever, you would not be eligible for those off-campus work opportunities. Students, again, on the H-4 visa are going to age out at 21. So most students in their senior year, even if you chose to stay on your other visa, will have to switch to an F1 in order to complete their studies. So it's up to you. You can make that change at any point throughout your time at the university. You can start on that H that first year, change your mind, switch to the F1 the second year, and universities will help you through that process. For students that are on an F1 visa, your sole purpose in the US is to study. So you have to be full-time student. You can't drop to part-time status. You also can work on campus. So that's one of the reasons that many students will choose to make that switch early. So you can get a campus job, perhaps work, get paid in the research labs on campus, because that's an option for you. You're also, of course, eligible for Cpt and Opt. So if you wanted to do some sort of a co-op opportunity, you certainly can. You also have eligibility to work in the US for a certain length of time after you've completed your studies without having to have whatever company it is sponsor your work visa. Your F1 is valid for the whole time that you remain full-time student status. So for most students, that's going to be 4 years, perhaps, up to 6 if you decide to do some sort of a master's program or extend your time. Once you get the I-20, there are a couple of different ways that you can switch your status. If you're looking to switch, you can go back to your country of origin or wherever you have roots and apply for your F1 visa there. This is the path that we recommend. The reason for that is doing your change of status within the US can be a very long process. It can also be very expensive. So believe it or not, it is sometimes less money to go home and do your change of status at the US consulate than it is for you to hire an immigration lawyer and apply for your change of status while remaining within the US. Of course, with lots of uncertainty in the world right now, I think there are more and more students that are choosing to remain on their previous status rather than switching to the F1 until they absolutely have to, for that reason. They're very backed up. If you're going to choose to do a change of status, we just encourage you, to consult with an immigration lawyer before you make your final decision. And of course, you can communicate with any international student service office, wherever it is that you're looking to study. They'll help you, they'll give you great advice and let you know kind of what they think would be the best path forward for you. That's what they're here for. They pay admissions to answer your admissions questions. They pay ISSS to make sure that all of your immigration questions are being answered accurately. Let's talk about the money now, a hot topic for all students. So I just want to give a high level overview of the difference between various tuitions that you might encounter through your college search process. So if you're looking to go to a private institution, fees are going to be the same for all students. So there's no in-state, out-of-state, international student fees. Everybody's paying the same amount. While that amount may be heavily discounted by merit-based scholarships or something like that, tuition is the same for everybody. Public institutions will determine your fees based on where you live or your immigration status. So in the state of New Jersey, if you've lived here for at least a year and you either hold a US passport or have one of the visa statuses that we talked about before, A, G, E, or H, then you can have in-state tuition rates if you're graduating from a New Jersey high school. Talking about the difference between those in-state versus out-of-state fees, there's going to be reduced fees for anybody that lives within the state that that university is located. And again, at Rutgers, Daca students will receive in-state tuition as well as some certain visa types. Out-of-state tuition is usually what international students are paying if you don't hold one of those visas. So I think another question that I get a lot, at least, is what's the tuition for international students? It's going to be the same as any student that lives in Pennsylvania or New York. So there are 2 different tuition types at Rutgers, in-state or out-of-state. Now let's talk a little bit about federal and state funding and where, how, and if students can qualify for that. So non-immigrant visa holders, undocumented students do not qualify for any federal funding. So that means that the US government that just forgave all those loans, unfortunately, you don't qualify for those, for better or worse. But some states do allow non-immigrant students, undocumented students, Daca students to have state funding. So your typical student may get some aid from the federal government as well as from the state within which they live. So there are some states, including New Jersey, that do offer in-state tuition pricing for Daca students or some other type of aid. So there are other states listed there as well. Most states don't offer any need-based aid in that circumstance. So while they may give you in-state tuition, they're not going to give you any additional grants. There are some exceptions to that depending on your status. In New Jersey, we do offer in-state aid or grants to undocumented students or Daca students, as well as a few others: California, Minnesota, New Mexico, Texas, Hawaii, and Washington. Some states are perhaps a bit more unfriendly to our international students or undocumented students, and they explicitly say no aid for you, no in-state tuition for you, nothing, nothing, nothing. And so those states are listed here as well. DACA and non-immigrant visa holders should not fill out a FAFSA, or a free application for federal student aid. I think this is important, especially for our DACA and undocumented students. While universities are not going to do anything when you report your status, the federal government may. So don't include that information, don't share it with them unless you are specifically asked to do so by the financial aid office for some reason or another. Occasionally we will ask students to do so at Rutgers, so I don't want to scare you off if financially you get an email from the official financial aid office, but generally speaking, don't do it unless you're asked. Now let's talk about some other types of aid that you might be able to receive as a non-immigrant student. Of course, there are those academic and merit-based scholarships. And so at most schools, Rutgers included, that's just going to be based on the information that you've shared on your application itself. So all you have to do is apply in order to be considered for this aid. Occasionally, universities will have a specific deadline for consideration. They may also have a separate application. So it's really good to make your full list, check it twice, and be sure that you're paying attention to how different universities may handle those scholarships. You may qualify for need-based aid, as we talked about. There are certain visa types in New Jersey where you can qualify for need-based financial aid. There are also many universities out there that will allow you to apply separately as an international student for need-based aid, mostly through the university. So that's something to bear in mind and to ask. Rutgers does not offer anything need-based to non-immigrant students, but other universities do. You may receive a special scholarship for a super awesome talent that you have. Students at Rutgers can be considered for performing arts or visual arts scholarships through the Mason Gross School of the Arts. You may also receive a scholarship for any athletic talents that you have if you're being recruited by a coach to play. There are also lots of external scholarships out there. You can get scholarships for the strangest things: knitting, being left-handed. The list goes on, and I'll provide a few other resources for places you can look for external scholarships as part of this presentation. So how can I apply? How can I get it? What do I qualify for? Of course, there are those scholarships and grants from the institutions, perhaps from the school district you live in, or other organizations that you may participate in outside of your school. Whether that's, a tutor that you go to, or an agency that's offering scholarships, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. There are also private organizations that offer scholarships. Some organizations that you might know well, like the Lions Club, or maybe your mosque or church that you're involved in. Boys and Girl Scouts also give out scholarships. There are also private organizations that just have a lot of money and want to give it to students. Places like McDonald's, Coca-Cola. Fastweb.com is a great place to kind of suss through some of those odd scholarships, like that knitting scholarship that I mentioned. That's where you can find that. So take a look there. It's a great repository for students who might be trying to find some outside funding in order to fund their education. You can get a private bank loan if you are not on a valid visa, or if you are on a valid visa. If you are not a US citizen, you will have to have somebody co-sign for you in order to get those private bank loans, though. So I know that can sometimes be a challenge for students and families. Students are certainly eligible to work on campus if they're on that F1. So that's a way that you might not be able to fund your full education, but it's certainly going to give you enough money so that you could go to the movies on the weekend or enjoy yourself otherwise on campus or off. And then, of course, what we see coming from most students is personal or sponsored funding. So paying with your personal funds or family funds or a combination of both of those things. There are certain countries throughout the world where the government there will sponsor students to study in certain areas or in certain countries. So that's something to bear in mind as well. Many countries in the Middle East in particular are willing to fund students either partially or fully to do their studies in the US. One other thing that I'll note, kind of harkening back to our conversation about bank statements and being able to provide affidavits for support in order to apply for that F1 visa. I certainly don't have $52,000 in a bank account. And I know that many other student folks don't either. And so it's also important to highlight this idea of a combination, right? If there is a family member that's willing to contribute some support, we're willing to take as many bank statements as it takes to add up to that $52,000. So just bear that in mind. And if you have questions, about that process, we're happy to address them. So let's talk about keys to success for making sure that you're able to meet your higher education goals. I think the first and most important thing to do is to talk as a family, to sit down and discuss what might be feasible for you. And, for some students that might be not an issue, and that's excellent. But for others, it might be a little bit more of a challenge. And so maybe part of that conversation is going to a community college for the first 2 years and completing that associate's degree and potentially making a transfer later. Our transfer students do very well on campus. They usually have gotten all of their sillies out by the time they get to Rutgers. So I do think it's a great option and one that perhaps I probably could have benefited from myself. Next, talk about a plan. Let's talk about a game plan, whether that is going to community college, whether that is applying for as many outside scholarships as possible, whether that's having a very large list of schools that you're going to apply for so that way you have many options before you when it comes time to make your final decision. Not too many because you don't want to drive your counselors crazy, but enough so that you have options. Think of your education as an investment, right? You're not expecting to spend all of this money and immediately see that return, right? This is a lifelong investment over the course of your life. I was astounded when I graduated from college and saw how many jobs required a bachelor's degree, preferred a master's degree, and also wanted at least 3 years of experience. So they're really looking for you to invest in yourself as part of your education. That means getting that bachelor's degree. That means doing as many internships as you can fit in while still succeeding in your classes. So think of it that way, even though the sticker prices are a little scary. And overall, don't give up on your dream. Again, if you apply to the school of your dreams and you don't get admitted that first go around, apply for transfer. If you are not sure of what you want to study and you think maybe working for a year or something like that would be a great fit for you, do that as well. There are so many options out there for you to be able to find your path and find your way. And don't hesitate to ask our students. We're always so happy to try to connect you with folks that might be able to make this process even the slightest bit less stressful for you. And with that, I'll open it up to questions. I saw that there were some hands raised throughout the presentation. So I'll certainly invite anybody who has questions, both about this process generally or perhaps specific to Rutgers, to share them in the chat. And we'd be happy to address any questions that you might have. I'm seeing a lot of hands raised. Why don't you guys type those questions into the chat and I'd be more than happy to address them that way. I think that might be easier for everybody. I think maybe the chat wasn't turned on, but I did just go ahead and enable it for everybody. Yep, so you should be able to go ahead and type your questions now. Sorry about that. All right, so first question coming through. What about the dependent visa L2? I know, I'm sorry. I wish that I made the rules, but unfortunately only H visa dependents are able to apply for in-state tuition. So that's a state policy, and unfortunately that's not something that Rutgers has any control over.
We will post a recording of the presentation on our website. So that should be available sometime tomorrow.
Thank you. How can international students get an SAT test? You're able to take the SAT here in the States. Do you guys offer the SAT at West Windsor? You test
We
in
do.
state? Awesome. So you don't even have to go anywhere. You can take it at school. I'm not sure of the answer to the question about GC pending, green card pending, be treated as a resident. Yes, you can apply for the FAFSA and you can be considered as an in-state resident if you're in that circumstance. Just like our H4 students, you may also have to go through a process of appealing and providing some additional documentation depending on where you are in that process. We can touch base about that with students after they've applied. We just ask that you answer the questions honestly on the application. And so when I ask that question and you say, I am status pending, we'll communicate with you and make sure that you're getting all of the information that you need. That's specific to Rutgers. I know other universities are the same. Can you give us a sense of ballpark costs for an undergraduate program at Rutgers? Olivia, do you want to take that one and talk about costs?
Yes, I'm actually going to put this link in the chat. It's basically a chart, a PDF file that lists all the like tuition and fees for each school, undergraduate school at Rutgers. This does not include any financial aid just because financial aid is determined, after admission, but this can give you a sense of the bare bones costs. So I'm going to put that in the chat for you. And actually, I'm going to put the link with the PDF in there as well. Just give me one moment, please.
Thank you so much, Olivia.
Thanks. And while I was talking about individual schools, one thing that I forgot to mention, which I think is important to bring up, is the fact that during our application process, I mentioned we have several undergraduate schools, 7 in total, which admit directly of high school. So the way you would apply is that you go to our application portal, and in there you'll have the choice to add up to 3 undergraduate schools, because each school houses its own majors, and each school would consider your application individually. So one admissions decision from, say, School of Engineering would not affect your admissions decision for, say, the School of Arts and Sciences. But I just wanted to add that note since I did not mention that earlier during my presentation.
Awesome, thank you. Do legal permanent residents also need to convert to an F1 visa? No. If you have a legal permanent resident status, then you can study on that without restriction. You can also work on or off campus without restriction if you're a permanent resident. So the SAT average question, Olivia did School of Medicine for 2020 admissions. I have no idea. We work only with our undergraduate students. But as far as the medical school is concerned, they would not be considering SAT scores. They'll be considering your MCAT scores if you're applying, and all of that information is available on the website. Ooh, big question here. How will this change in these inflationary economy? I have no idea, sir. I wish I knew the answer to that question. You could probably make a lot of money if you could answer it yourself.
Sarah, there was a question that I thought was interesting and a little bit different. One of the families asked about how is admissions considered when you're looking at applicants who have maybe a mixed program, who've studied internationally in a different country and then also studied here. How would you, consider that?
That is a great question. And it's again one of those that admissions folks are so frustrating. It depends. Rutgers may handle that differently from other universities, so I'll speak from my own perspective. I'll tell you right now, if our domestic admissions team looks at a student who has studied outside the US, they immediately come running into my office, and we'll work on it together. So that's usually a joint conversation between our domestic team and our international team, because we're the ones that better understand that international curricula. So, it's going to be a shared conversation. You'll have many eyes on your application in that circumstance. Another thing that I'll note when it comes to the application process at Rutgers, and perhaps may differ from other universities, we are not equating anybody to a US GPA. So those 2 years, we're not going to try to like make them fit with your studies at West Windsor. We're going to look at those in context with what opportunities you had at your previous school versus what opportunities you had. We're also considering the fact that you've not only switched countries and curriculum. That's a big adjustment for anybody, no matter what, but it's also a big personal adjustment. So we do take that into account when we're reviewing students that may have switched schools like that. And I would say that for a domestic student as well. If you're switching to a new place and having to start over in some ways, that's something that we consider. Lots of very similar questions. So I'm just skipping over.
While we're looking, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
While you're looking, I did see a question asking what college to apply to if you plan to go to med school after completing undergrad at Rutgers. So I'm just going to answer that question in regards to Rutgers, New Brunswick. In this context specifically, we have several dual degree programs. Those are not direct admit, but students can apply to any of our schools, including School of Arts and Sciences or School of Environmental and Biological Sciences. There's no specific major they have to do, and students interested in med school can then be brought into contact with our health professions office at Rutgers, New Brunswick, and they would coordinate applying to med school, looking at these dual degree programs, and just what that process would look like. So I know this person was perhaps asking about, schools in general to apply to after undergrad, but I just wanted to answer that in regards to Rutgers, New Brunswick.
Thanks, Olivia. Question about the admission profile. High school GPA in our school district caps out at a 4.0, but I see the link above has 4.2, 4.3. How is that possible? Other schools weight grade point averages differently, so that admission profile is actually on a 4.5 scale. Suffice it to say, we're looking for our students to have A's and B's. How I always explain this to students is if I can look at your transcript and I can cover up the lower grades with maybe one finger, perhaps two, that's all right. If I have to take out both hands, we got an issue. Any other good questions you're seeing, Olivia or Barbara? If your parents are immigrants, but you were born here, are you still eligible for scholarships? Yes, absolutely. But you would be considered for scholarships as a domestic student. So that's how we're determining who qualifies for what is based on your passport. I know, I'm so sorry to all my L2 visa holders out here. I wish that was part of that in-state tuition policy. Unfortunately, it's not. You're still welcome to apply. You're still welcome to be considered for scholarships at the university. Anybody whose green card or permanent legal resident is pending can be considered for those in-state tuition rates, as well as perhaps some aid from the state of New Jersey. We'll walk you through that process as you apply. Just be honest on the application about your status. H visa and H-1B are the same. Do you consider SAT or school GPA? If you consider both, then how does the distribution go? Olivia, you want to take that one?
Yes. So as I mentioned previously, we are test optional. If you look at the admissions profile, and I'm going to put the link to actual PDF file listing the averages. I'm going to put that in chat. If you look at that profile, you will see that each school has somewhat different averages. The averages are the middle 50% of the scores that students actually submitted. So 25% of students submitting scores had scores below that range, 25% had scores above that range. So if you send your scores, if you look at that range and you feel that your scores represent you well as a student, then go ahead and send them in and we would consider them. But if you don't, then no harm done, and you will receive full admissions consideration. With the GPA, of course, this goes back to the self-report academic record I was talking about earlier. When you enter your coursework as well as your grades, that will of course send us your GPA. So we will have that information. And again, just go back to admissions profile. If you're considering what schools, what undergraduate schools to apply to in Rutgers, New Brunswick, since each school has somewhat different averages, that might be interesting to consider, but your GPA would of course be considered since it would be submitted through the self-reported academic record.
No easy answers. We're looking at everything. Olivia, I have another question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What is the SAT score submitted for computer engineering or computer science? Is there a breakdown for multiple majors within engineering or SAS in this case?
So if I understand correctly, the question's asking whether there's differences in SAT score averages for majors, for specific majors within,
Yes.
okay. So no, so the averages we have are the averages provided in the admissions profile. These are school specific, they're not major specific. This also goes back to the fact that all students who enter Rutgers, you will enter technically undecided in major. We ask you to indicate a major of interest in your application, but this is non-binding. So when you enter, you will technically be undecided. And usually, unless you're in School of Engineering, which is more credit intensive, usually in the other schools, you would have until the second semester of your sophomore year to actually declare your major. So that is also why it doesn't really make sense to have a specific, SAT score or GPA requirement, because you ultimately don't know exactly what you're going to major in. And we also don't want to push you to make a decision so quickly.
Yeah, no majors for our first year student at Rutgers. You're going directly into the school. I will also just add as a clarifying point, because I know that this is a popular major for many of our international students in particular. At Rutgers, computer science is not housed within our School of Engineering. Computer science is a program authored through our School of Arts and Sciences. We do offer computer engineering. That's going to be much more hardware focused, whereas your software courses, your programming courses, that's all going to be offered through that computer science course within the School of Arts and Sciences. Go ahead.
Sorry. And to add that, our computer science major in the School of Arts and Sciences is offered both as a Bachelor of the Arts and a Bachelor of the Science. So again, there's a lot of different ways you can take this major.
Seeing another question about financial support. Are you required to have all 4 years accounted for when you're submitting those bank statements? And the answer is no. We will be looking for you to submit that financial support each year. In order for you to get a new I-20, you'll need that all 4 years of your course of study. But each time you'll only be asked to show proof of funding for 1 year. So 52. Does tuition cost change based on the major? Not based on the major, but tuition does vary slightly from school to school within the university. That information I think is shared on the link that Olivia shared with everybody. When does undergrad admission for class of 2024 begin? Ooh, we got some eager parents here. I love it. So students who are applying for fall 2024 should be looking to apply September 2023. So next year.
I also see a question asking about scholarships criteria, whether there's any documentation needed. In this case, I'm assuming the question refers to merit scholarships, so I'm just going to answer it like that. For merit scholarships at Rutgers, New Brunswick, again, no separate application is required. We just ask you that you apply by December 1st. Merit scholarships are very competitive. That's, again, why we give that admissions profile to you as a guide, but there's no extra steps needed on your behalf for merit scholarships offered directly by Rutgers, New Brunswick. Just put everything in by December 1st.
Is volunteering or internship still a part of international student admission? Yeah, just like we're looking at the same things as everything else for domestic students, we are looking at your extracurricular activities and anything that you're doing outside of the classroom, whether that's volunteer, internships, working, whatever. I will also add though two caveats to that. Just like we would be taking a student in context if they spent a few years at another high school, that's a consideration for us as well. If you studied outside of the US for part of your high school experience, we're expecting that you may have had fewer options for participating in clubs and things like that. And so that's a factor for us. I'll also say grades are still going to be first and most important, folks. So study hard. Another good question, are students eligible for OPT if they change to the F1 visa in their final year? Yes. But I will add the caveat, it takes a long time to do change of status. So if you're thinking about going that route and remaining on another visa type throughout part of your studies at the university, you may not want to wait until the end of your junior year in order to begin that process. It can take some time. I know that we're running short on time. There are still tons and tons of questions. Many of them are very similar, but what I would love to do is just go ahead and share my screen again. And I'm going to share both my email address and Olivia's. Please take a picture of this. Please use and abuse it. We're more than happy to answer any questions that you may have, whether they are about the admission process generally. And if that's the case, go ahead and shoot them to Olivia. She is the counselor for your school. If your questions are more nuanced, or if you're looking to, I saw a few requests to perhaps have a conversation about your specific situation, your immigration status, whatever the case may be for you personally, you're more than welcome to reach out to me, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you about that. And I'd like to thank everybody from West Windsor, especially Kavita, for putting this together. Thank you so much for having us. It was our pleasure.
No, thank you so much, Sarah and Olivia. You guys are great. And I think you have shared a lot of very important information today. And I've learned a lot myself. And, I'm sure the families have learned as well. If people reach out to me, I will certainly see if I can send out those questions to you as well, forward some of them to you, Olivia, as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.